Hi, I'm Kath from KathleenRob.com, and thank you so much for joining me today for this video slash podcast slash blog. Um, Today, what I want to talk to you about is going beyond cholesterol for looking at cardiovascular risk. So, I have a passionate interest in cardiometabolic health, as many people will know. And one of my little bugbears is that cholesterol, particularly LDL cholesterol, is kind of really honed in on as the one risk we all need to be paying attention to. And I think it gets a little bit distorted attention. We really focus on it. I'm not saying it's not important, but we hyper focus on it, and maybe to the neglect of seeing cardiovascular health as a bigger picture. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. So I hope this is useful to you. In particular, if you have any cardiovascular risk factors, or this has been discussed with you, with your doctor or healthcare provider, or if there's a family history of any cardiovascular issues, then I think this is really important stuff to be aware of. Cardiovascular health is one of the biggest health risks that we have in the Western world. So yeah, I think it's important to be well versed in it and to understand our own health levels and what we can do to support them. So today is more about understanding the assessment of it. So one of the things that happens is people will come to me with raised cholesterol and they don't want to have a medication, so they come to me to seek an alternative, and they really are focusing on cholesterol. That's their first, time that it's been brought to their attention that they may have some cardiovascular risk factors. So they get quite concerned and they want to do something about it. Now, what is often the case is there may have already been other risk factors that they are not seeing through that lens. It's often the cholesterol for some reason that tips them into getting more help. And there's not really an understanding of why their cholesterol might be high or what other risk factors there are. So we're going to look at cholesterol as its own marker in a further video. But for this one, I want to put it into place with all the other risk factors and see how it is in context. So yes, LDL cholesterol in particular is a marker with some bearing on cardiovascular health, that for sure, but it's not necessarily the most important. In fact, while we can get the impression in the mainstream health media that we want our LDL cholesterol as low as possible, that is not actually the case. We want it to be in a sweet spot in the middle. And the reason for that is that our body uses cholesterol to make hormones and vitamin D and other things like that for cell membranes, all these types of things. So we don't want to suppress our LDL or our cholesterol as much as possible. We want it to be balanced somewhere in the middle. Now, we get taught that LDL is the bad cholesterol, but it really depends on the particle size of the LDL. So if we were going to go in and from raised cholesterol and think, what is my cardiovascular risk factor, we really want to look broader at many contributing markers for overall cardiovascular health so that we can look at all of them, address all of them as far as possible, and see from that bigger picture of how they're all contributing to our health or possible risks. So when we have raised LDL cholesterol, it is really valuable to get a test done for the LDL particle size, because the large particles don't tend to get caught in little cracks and crannies in our vessels, causing inflammation and further, blockages. It's the little ones, the very low density lipoproteins that tend to get caught more in that way. So we want to get a sense of the particle size. That this can be tested often by a naturopath such as myself or functional integrative doctors. So that's one thing. We also want to see the proportions of various types of cholesterol. So really important marker is triglycerides. We don't want raised triglycerides. That's potentially more of interest to me than slightly raised LDL. Triglycerides need to be kept in balance with HDL, which is a more beneficial form of cholesterol. So we are very interested in the ratio of triglycerides to HDL. So make sure that is being checked and you're getting some feedback on that from your healthcare provider. So we're looking at LDL particle size, the ratio of triglycerides to HDL, triglycerides in their own right. Beyond that lipid panel, I'm also really interested in comparing not only fasting blood sugar on its own, but how much fasting insulin there is in relation to that fasting blood sugar to get a sense of whether insulin resistance might be present, because this contributes to risk factor in cardiometabolic health. I'm also really interested in fibrinogen, which is kind of the thickness or stickiness of the blood. We want that to be in a nice sweet spot as well, in the middle. Homocysteine is an independent risk marker for cardiovascular health. It's also implicated in unexplained weight gain, in mood disorders, in various other things. So homocysteine is a really interesting marker. I'm also particularly interested in cortisol, which is a marker of the stress hormone. Ideally, we want morning and afternoon cortisol, or even better, a saliva test of 4 times over the day, because cortisol has a diurnal rhythm, a circadian rhythm, so it peaks and troughs over the day. So if we only get one marker, we don't know, am I looking at the peak or the trough? So yeah, it's better than nothing, but ideally you want to compare morning and afternoon or 4 times over the day. So cortisol, triglycerides, HDL, fibrinogen, homocysteine, LDL, blood glucose and insulin. There's also other markers such as lipoprotein A versus lipoprotein B, and seeing which one is predominant. We also want to see what your blood pressure is. So just going into a pharmacy and asking them to check your blood pressure can be really helpful. It's only rarely useful when we have a trend over time. One measurement of your blood pressure might just be because you're rushing or you're stressed because you're getting your blood pressure taken. So it's really good to have an idea over time with regular checkups of what your blood pressure tends to be. And then looking at, if you can get further testing, if there's a family risk, looking at things like the calcium score, like how much calcium is causing your arteries to harden up, because that's really important as well. And that ideally would be taken into consideration alongside cholesterol to determine the best approach. So yeah, we really want to look broadly at cardiovascular health, blood sugar, stress hormones, cholesterol and types of cholesterol and ratios of cholesterol. We want to look at homocysteine. We want to look at fibrinogen. We want to look at blood pressure, calcium arteries. So it's really a broad thing of looking at the broader picture. And then, of course, is how other systems are affecting it, what your family history is, what your diet and lifestyle is. That's an important marker of your future cardiovascular health. So looking at you as a whole person, your social interaction, your ability to relax, how much sleep you're getting, how much exercise you get. It's all important as part of a cardiovascular risk assessment. So make sure, if you have any concerns at all, or for your cardiovascular health, your family history is, or your previous symptoms have given you concern, or even really once we're well into adulthood, I call myself well into adulthood, but certainly over 30, 40 or 50, you might want to start looking into these things and taking them into consideration and addressing any markers that are beginning to go out of range. So if you would like help getting a thorough cardiovascular risk assessment, please book in to see me. I would love to help you with that. I do discovery calls, so I can have a quick chat with you about what your concerns are regarding cardiovascular health and whether this is right for you. Or you can just book straight in and we can get to referral and treatment as required. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this was helpful. I will have this attached to a blog post with a list of those cardiovascular markers. So I hope you find it useful, and I'll see you the next time. Bye.